The CEO's wife wants to keep our marriage secret. I left with my daughter to fulfill her. Everyone laughed at me, a single father, daring to pursue the CEO. But no one knew that I had already been secretly married to her for 8 years, until my daughter was bullied at school, and the CEO wife still chose to turn a blind eye. Going for a candlelit dinner with her male secretary, I decided to leave with my daughter to fulfill her love, but later, the once proud woman begged us to come back. Chapter 1. As soon as I received the call from the school, I rushed over, only to find my daughter, Camila, standing alone in the corner, looking lonely and aggrieved as the victim. On the other hand, the parents of the other bullies had already gathered, happily chatting as a family. I felt nothing but guilt. Sorry, Camila, Daddy's late. The moment Camila saw me, she rushed into my arms, and after a while, she looked up, her eyes subconsciously scanning the surroundings. She didn't say anything, but I knew she was waiting for her mother. On my way over, I called and texted Veronica, but she had blocked me everywhere. I couldn't reach her at all. Today, it seemed, Camila was going to suffer once again. What I didn't expect was Veronica's desire to keep our marriage and pregnancy a secret, to the point where she heartlessly ignored our daughter being bullied. I had always chosen to endure, hoping to provide a complete home for my child. But now, was it still necessary? Just as I was lost in thought, the teacher came up to greet me warmly. When will Camila's mother be here? I felt a bit awkward. She's tied up with something and can't come right now. The teacher's expression turned somewhat meaningful after hearing that. I was at a loss for words, only able to try reaching Veronica again. But instead, I saw a post on Oliver's WeChat Moments. The picture showed 2 hands entwined in a luxury car, with the reflection in the window showing 2 figures leaning against each other. Veronica's face was clear, but it felt strange, like it was a version of her I could never see, because it was a tenderness and shyness I would never get. The caption Oliver posted only made my heart feel even more bitter. Turning off my phone after work. No one can disturb us. It's just me and her for a candlelit dinner. No wonder I still couldn't reach Veronica after work. Nothing could interfere with her and her assistant's romantic dinner. I can't say I'm disappointed. In truth, I had already guessed, but still clung to the last, naive hope. Now, Veronica had put an end to that hope with her own hands. Camila was all I had left. I put away my phone and looked at the teacher with a stern face. Teacher, Camila is being bullied at school, and I need an explanation. The teacher was friendly, but when she spoke, she firmly denied any bullying had taken place, claiming it was just a normal tussle between kids. The other parents even tried to shift the blame onto Camila. She hit someone too. We haven't asked you for medical fees. Let's all take a step back and resolve this. It seemed like they had all coordinated their stories. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at their shamelessness. I was about to speak up in rebuttal when suddenly, an argument broke out near Camila. The boys surrounded her, shouting, "You don't even have a mom. You're just a wild child. Then why hasn't your mom come yet?" Camila shouted back, helpless and furious, "I do have a mom. I'm not a wild child." With teachers and parents present, they all stood there with an air of arrogance. When Camila was alone at school, I couldn't imagine how bad it must have been. My heart ached, and I quickly stepped in to shield her, coldly staring at them. "I think I've understood your attitude. If you can't teach your kids properly, I'll do it for you." The parents, realizing they were in the wrong, awkwardly pulled their children closer but still refused to admit fault. The teacher stepped in to mediate. "Calm down, Camila's dad. Let's talk this through calmly." I held back my anger, but once I had calmed down, I realized Camila had gone silent. Looking down, I saw her gripping my sleeve tightly, unable to speak, tears welling up in her eyes. I could feel her body shaking uncontrollably. She really did have a mother, but that mother couldn't be the warm harbor she needed. And worse, her mother was even used as an excuse to hurt her. Camila didn't even have the courage to defend herself. I feared staying in this environment would leave emotional scars on her, and I heartlessly hugged Camila, intending to take her away. I coldly looked at the others. I won't let this go. On the way back, Veronica's phone was still off. I angrily hung up the call, knowing it wouldn't be answered. Veronica had blocked me on WeChat Moments, but Oliver, contrary to his claim, hadn't turned off his phone. He was still posting pictures and live streaming. The two of them were already having a candlelit dinner at a Michelin star restaurant. I didn't expect her to arrange a surprise for me. "This watch I've been collecting for so long," and she noticed. "It's so thoughtful. I love it." Oliver posted a picture of a luxury watch worth 200,000 yuan. The watch itself was eye-catching, but the background of the photo was even more so. Oliver was hugging Veronica, his hand wearing the watch placed on her low-cut dress at her chest. It was the perfect blend of an expensive watch and a beautiful woman, seductive and extravagant. I glanced at Camila sitting beside me. She was silent, her mood downcast, no longer the lively girl she once was. For all these years, I had held on because of Camila, but I was wrong. Maintaining this dysfunctional family was doing nothing but harm to her. I had to take her away. Chapter 2. After making up my mind, I looked down at Camila and asked, "Are you unhappy at this school? After everything's settled, how about we move to a new place?" Camila looked at me with confusion, then nodded, her face finally showing a hint of a smile. But she didn't know that when I said move to a new place, it wasn't just about changing schools. It was already 8 p.m., and Veronica still hadn't come home. "Good night, Daddy." Camila came over after washing up and said good night to me. "Good night, Camila." In the past, Camila always wanted to wait for her mom to come back before going to bed. But tonight, she quietly climbed into her little bed without a word. My heart ached terribly. Though she was still small, she wasn't clueless. She probably already understood that her mother might not love her at all. I don't know why she has to bear all of this at such a young age. I waited until 2 a.m., then finally heard the sound of the door opening. Veronica walked in, looking somewhat disheveled. "You're just getting back now. Camila's been bullied at school." Before I could finish, Veronica immediately showed a look of disdain. "I don't want to deal with her school issues. You handle it. Don't bother me with this. I'm exhausted from work." I stared at her in disbelief. "She's your daughter. You're just going to ignore her. I'm already taking care of her. The money and the house are mine. You two can't even manage the basics. Don't cause me trouble." I was frozen in place. Veronica's indifferent attitude made it feel as though we were just unwanted outsiders. I lost the strength to keep talking, so I just stood there, watching Veronica leave with obvious impatience. Wherever she went, I could follow her movements through Oliver's social media posts. Oliver's latest post was a photo of the night view from a hotel room on a high floor. The reflection in the glass showed a man and a woman both in bathrobes, and they were in the same bathrobe, wrapped around both of them. I think I should be angry, but right now, all I can do is laugh. I might as well compliment Oliver on his creative idea. Looking at Veronica, she seemed like a stranger now, someone I couldn't even muster up any emotions for. The next day at work, I handed my resignation letter to my boss. The boss looked at me in surprise, clearly not expecting me to resign. After all, to them, I was just a delusional single father chasing after the CEO, hoping to marry into wealth. Back at my desk, Veronica surprisingly called me to her office. When her secretary came to call me, she had a somewhat amused look on her face. It wasn't just her. On my way there, I could feel the stares of others. The CEO called him to her office personally. Maybe he's pulling some trick to grab the CEO's attention again. Finally, they all concluded with a remark. "Out of his league." The mocking words reached my ears, and I held the document in my hand, my expression still calm. For all these years, Veronica had hidden her marriage and child, deliberately avoiding suspicion. Whenever she saw me at work, she acted as if I were invisible, never allowing me near her. During work hours, she would even block me on WeChat, preventing me from contacting her. At the time, I didn't understand. I asked her for a reason. She casually threw out, "I'm worried about our messages being seen by others," and kicked me out. Then, when Camila was 3, I got a call from the nanny. I rushed to Veronica's office when I heard Camila was sick. "Camila's sick. Come with me to the hospital." Before I finished speaking, I realized there were several people in the office. Veronica had just been in a meeting. She glared at me, her face dark, almost exposing her hidden marriage. Her gaze was so cold, it could have killed me. I ended up going to the hospital alone. Afterwards, I heard people at the office gossiping about my relationship with Veronica. Some of the bolder ones came to ask, "Why did the CEO go with you to the hospital when your daughter was sick? What's your relationship with her?" I hesitated, unsure how to explain, but before long, their expressions shifted to mockery. It turned out Veronica had issued an official company statement saying that I had been pursuing her in private. She claimed to be deeply disturbed by my behavior. The statement warned me to stop damaging the CEO's image and reputation and to cease any further harassment. Everyone at the company knew I had a daughter. From that moment on, I became the laughingstock in everyone's eyes, a single dad daring to pursue the female CEO. At that time, Oliver had just graduated from college and started as an intern in the company. His good looks quickly attracted attention. Veronica had taken an interest in him. She claimed it was for professional reasons, using Oliver as a decoy, but the fake act gradually became real, and I watched their relationship grow more and more intimate. The company had even more reasons to laugh at me. How could I compete with a young, handsome guy? At the time, I gritted my teeth and swallowed all my suffering. I told myself it was all for my daughter, but now, I didn't want to keep going anymore. Chapter 3. Upon entering the office, Veronica glanced up at me before continuing her work, giving off the impression that she intended to ignore me. I turned around, ready to leave. Veronica immediately stopped me. "Your temper is getting worse just because I asked you to wait a bit. You're throwing a tantrum." I looked at her calmly. "What's the matter?" She furrowed her brows, clearly displeased with my response. She wanted to snap, but decided to get down to business first. I heard about Camila's situation at school. Let's just forget about it and move on. I was so angry that I laughed. I looked at Veronica in disbelief. Your daughter was bullied because of you. Those kids called her a wild child with no mother. Did you know that? No, you didn't. Because you didn't even show up yesterday. Now you want me to let it go and not pursue the bullies. Veronica was clearly unaware of the reason Camila had been bullied. A flicker of shock passed through her eyes. She rarely explained herself, but this time, she tried to justify her actions. I had something to do yesterday. It was Oliver's birthday. He's working hard in this city, and it's not easy for him. He needed someone to be with him on his birthday. But what about Camila? Didn't she need her mother? From childhood until now, Veronica had always been half-hearted about Camila's birthdays. If there were other people at the party, she wouldn't show up. Camila, wanting to be with her mother, stopped having birthday parties altogether. But what she got in return was Veronica staying for only a minute. Veronica would sit there, playing with her phone, and as soon as we finished singing the birthday song, she would leave, never even giving Camila a hug. But now, she was so invested in another man's birthday. I know I've wronged Camila, but this is our business partner. He heard you were working here and asked me to handle it. Veronica then took a box out of her drawer. I'll compensate Camila. Kids forget all their troubles when they see presents. This is the gift I've prepared for her. Veronica opened the box, and inside was a sexy nightgown. I immediately became enraged. Veronica furrowed her brows but quickly relaxed, trying to play it off. I grabbed the wrong one. At that moment, Oliver entered the room. Seeing the box, he smiled and said, Phineas, do you like the gift? I picked it out. You're getting older now. It's time you find a girlfriend. Then you'll be able to use something like this. Stop bothering our CEO. I didn't say anything, just stared at Veronica. She cleared her throat uncomfortably. I was supposed to get a gift for Phineas's daughter, not for him. What does he have to do with me? Veronica still saw me as invisible, even worried that Oliver might misunderstand. Oliver, upon hearing this, smiled more sincerely and took another box out of his pocket. Oh, I actually brought 2 gifts, but I forgot one. He opened the box, revealing a butterfly-shaped hairpin, a perfectly normal gift for a child. As for the other gift, it was a challenge from Oliver to me. Veronica understood, but she chose to indulge him. She looked at Oliver with a mix of affection and helplessness. You're always so forgetful. I can't help it. I lose things all the time. I've lost my house keys so many times. Luckily you're here. I watched as they began to flirt in front of me. I handed Veronica the document I was holding, trying to keep things professional. This document needs your signature. Veronica finally snapped out of it and looked at me. What is it? The previous file needs to be filed. Just need your signature. This was a standard procedure, though it shouldn't have been my job to bring it. I figured I might as well do it now. With Oliver standing nearby, Veronica's mind was elsewhere. She casually signed the document. Okay, you can leave now. I'll make it up to your daughter. She wanted me to leave quickly. I understood the hint and left without taking the hairpin. I knew that her promise to compensate Camila was just empty words, but at least I had successfully taken something with me. Looking at the divorce agreement I had in my hand, now signed, I felt a huge weight lifted from my chest. The final stages of the resignation process were almost done, and I had some unused vacation days, which I decided to take. That awful school no longer mattered. I decided to take Camila on a trip instead. Camila, who had been showing signs of depression, finally started to smile again with my company. That gave me some peace of mind. The offer from the overseas company had already come through, but I still didn't know how to explain the divorce to Camila. Once everything was settled, that's when I'd truly be at ease. I heard the amusement park was having a float parade event. I took Camila, who was dressed up as a little princess, and we were among the first to enter the park. While waiting, we enjoyed almost every ride in the park. Kids have so much energy. She almost wore me out. Fortunately, the parade started, and it captured her attention. Oliver's here. But to my surprise, Veronica and her crew were at the park the same day, and they had chosen the same viewing spot. When Veronica saw Camila and me, she panicked for a moment before frowning, signaling me with her eyes to leave. Camila didn't understand adult matters, though she was a bit hurt earlier. Seeing her mother still brought her joy, she reached out her hand to grab Veronica's. Veronica reacted violently, slapping Camila's hand away. She didn't hold back, and Camila almost fell to the ground. I quickly stepped forward to catch her, preventing her from getting hurt. Veronica hesitated for a moment, but then firmly turned and walked away with Oliver. Camila's eyes grew dimmer as she watched Veronica leave. She softly asked me, Daddy, does Mom not want me anymore? The parade had already started. The streets were lined with excited spectators. One after another, animated-themed floats rolled by, with performers in colorful costumes waving to the crowd. But Camila and I had lost all interest. I crouched down, looking into Camila's sad eyes. I spoke clearly, word by word. Camila, not all mothers are good mothers. It's not your fault. Daddy plans to take us somewhere completely different from a city. You'll meet new things and make new friends. Would you like to come with Daddy? Camila nodded vigorously. As long as I'm with Daddy, it's okay. With the applause and cheers around us, I hugged Camila tightly. I was saying it to her, but also to myself. We're going to a brand new life. Chapter 4. Not far away, Veronica and Oliver found a new spot, but Veronica seemed a little distracted. Had she been too harsh earlier? She still hadn't made good on her promise to compensate for the previous incident. She anxiously looked over at the spot where Camila and I had been sitting earlier, as if she could still see the backs of the two of us leaving. A sense of panic suddenly surged in Veronica's heart, as if something was slipping away from her. Without thinking, she instinctively wanted to chase after us. Veronica, what's wrong? Where are you going? She was about to move, but Oliver's voice stopped her. Veronica snapped out of it. What was she about to do? She couldn't bring herself to say she wanted to check on Phineas and Camila. Instead, she pulled back her foot. It's nothing. She'd look for them later when she got home. After all, Phineas and Camila would still be there. Today's events were still related to the school situation, and she would make it up to them. Camila's birthday was next month, wasn't it? This time, she would make sure to spend it with Camila. Thinking this, Veronica's previously tense body finally relaxed. Oliver took her hand to lead her to the next activity, but Veronica suddenly remembered that Phineas and Camila might not have left yet. They could be nearby. Before she knew it, she had let go of Oliver's hand. What's wrong? Veronica opened her mouth, but no words came out. Once again, she was speechless. Whenever it came to Phineas and Camila, it seemed she could never face them honestly. She had no interest in continuing the fun anymore. But Oliver hadn't started having fun yet. He was planning to ride the roller coaster and pulled Veronica along with him. She frowned, wanting to refuse, but couldn't resist Oliver's pouty look. So she compromised. Veronica's mind once again flashed to Phineas and Camila. Phineas and his daughter always put her first. The time spent with Veronica was precious. So if she made Veronica happy, maybe it would extend their time together. At that moment, she couldn't afford to be willful. Whether it was food, gifts, or anything else, she needed to make sure Veronica liked it. This was the method Phineas had figured out. Camila, on the other hand, simply wanted to please her mother naturally. Veronica had to admit that this kind of interaction with Camila made her feel comfortable. Camila was well behaved. As soon as she showed the slightest hint of unhappiness, she would immediately apologize and try to change. She was such a worry-free child. Amusement parks, however, were filled with children. The noise, the shouting, the roughhousing, it all made Veronica feel irritable. If Camila had been this willful and noisy, Veronica wouldn't have wanted to spend even a second with her. Not far away, a little girl insisted on buying a giant stuffed animal. Her mother refused, but the girl threw herself on the floor, throwing a tantrum. Veronica's brows tightened. The girl's mother looked helpless as she negotiated with her daughter. In the end, she bought a more reasonably sized stuffed animal. The storekeeper said, "Your daughter is so lucky to have such a good mother." The mother wasn't impressed. "She'll grow out of being spoiled. I'll indulge her now." And what's wrong with that? Kids are just naughty. They should act like kids. Kids acting like kids. Suddenly, Veronica remembered the rare compliment she'd given Camila. Right, she's like a little adult. Camila had been trying hard to be the little adult that would please her. But wasn't that something a child should be like? Camila didn't act this way around Phineas. The whole afternoon, Veronica's mind was consumed by thoughts of Camila and Phineas. And by the time the day was over, she was lost in her thoughts. Oliver, feeling somewhat disappointed, said, "You're here to have fun, but you've been daydreaming the whole time." "I haven't had enough fun. You owe me. I saw a pair of sneakers I like. I'll send you the link. Buy them for me." Spoiled. Childish. A few words jumped into Veronica's mind. So it wasn't that she couldn't tolerate these qualities. It was just that the person was different. She was taken aback by her own thoughts. But that was her daughter. Although from the very beginning, she hadn't looked forward to Camila's arrival or to this marriage. Phineas had saved Veronica's grandfather's life. Her grandfather liked Phineas so much that he even wanted Veronica to marry him. Phineas was gentle, responsible, and attentive. There was nothing wrong with him. But this marriage, Veronica had never wanted it. It felt like chains imposed on her. She had absolutely no intention of showing Phineas any kindness. She didn't even want him to touch her. But then, one night, after drinking, something unexpected happened, breaking her plans. Veronica had been furious. She hadn't expected Phineas to be that kind of person. But in the end, what was supposed to happen, happened. She gave birth to a child but never wanted any contact with Phineas again. Now, Veronica had reached the present, and she'd never felt that she had done anything wrong. But now, for the first time, Veronica felt a sense of confusion. Had she done something wrong? Before leaving the amusement park, Veronica bought the largest stuffed animal in the store. Oliver naturally assumed it was a compensation gift for him, and his face immediately showed dissatisfaction. I'm not a child anymore. I came to the amusement park just to join the fun. I don't want this cheap stuffed animal. I want those sneakers. If you don't buy them, I won't talk to you. Veronica furrowed her brows, feeling a bit stung by Oliver's words. Chapter 5. If Veronica were to reflect on what she had done wrong, it was probably that she had indulged Oliver too much. That's why he was so bold and carefree in front of her. But today, Veronica simply didn't have the energy to deal with him. So she went ahead and bought Oliver the pair of sneakers worth $100,000. Then, she arranged for a courier to send the stuffed animal to their home. Would Camilla like it? For the first time since becoming a mother, Veronica had such expectations. She wanted to see Camilla's smiling face. Phineas would probably be happy about this too, right? Lately, Phineas had been pushing back against her, thinking she didn't care enough for Camilla. She had to show Phineas that she was wrong. She did care about Camilla. Thinking this, Veronica's mood lightened a bit. Oliver was thrilled with his new sneakers. He walked over, hugged Veronica, and tried to kiss her. Before Veronica's mind could process it, her body reacted first. She pulled away from him. Oliver paused, his face instantly falling. He purposely moved far away from Veronica, sitting quietly and staring out the window. A wave of irritation rose in Veronica's chest. She ignored him completely. That evening, Veronica locked herself in the study to handle some work. There was a project that needed to be wrapped up, but she still didn't have all the materials. Only 3 more days left, and it still wasn't ready. Are you just sitting around doing nothing? It's been almost half a month, and you still haven't prepared these materials. If you can't handle it, just quit, Veronica snapped. Speaking into the phone with her secretary, the secretary stuttered and finally admitted that the material task had been assigned to Oliver. Oliver had always bypassed the hierarchy and communicated directly with Veronica. The secretary assumed Oliver had already sent her the materials. Veronica felt a headache coming on. They were in the same house, but instead of confronting him directly, Veronica decided to message Oliver on WeChat. She sent the message, but a red exclamation mark appeared. Oliver had blocked her because of what happened earlier in the car. Veronica's face darkened as she walked to the living room. Oliver was playing a game. When he saw her, a smile appeared on his face but quickly faded. The A project materials. Now, Veronica said in a professional tone, standing not far from him. Oliver, expecting an apology instead, jumped up. Aren't you supposed to apologize first? You're asking me to work overtime late at night. That's your job. I assigned it to you half a month ago, Veronica replied calmly. Oliver's face stiffened. I'll get it to you tomorrow, he said, avoiding her gaze. Veronica rubbed her forehead, trying to keep calm. I need it now. There are only a few days left. If it's not done, we'll run out of time. Oliver stood there, unmoving. Veronica frowned, her voice growing colder. You didn't do it, did you? Oliver, seeing Veronica angry, snapped back. You've been looking at me like I'm the enemy all day. You're even picking a fight with me over work. Fine, I won't do it. If you're in such a rush, do it yourself. With that, Oliver grabbed his jacket and left, slamming the door behind him. Bang. The loud sound of the door slamming made Veronica's heart tremble. All of the exhaustion she had been suppressing that day came rushing to the surface. If only Phineas were here, he would notice her bad mood and make her some soup, or massage her shoulders. Camilla would tenderly pull her to bed. Why did these warm, tender moments now feel so distant in her memory? That's right, she had never cared about them before. She hadn't even wanted to acknowledge it. She had pushed them away, telling them to leave her alone. But they wouldn't leave. They would sit somewhere within her sight, quietly watching her. Phineas and Camilla, both watching her back. A smile unconsciously appeared on Veronica's face. Just then, her phone rang, cutting off her reverie. Hello, I've arrived at the address to deliver your package, but I can't get in touch with the recipient. They're at home, Veronica replied, a sudden, uneasy feeling creeping over her. Chapter 6. During the day, a vague thought had crossed Veronica's mind but was interrupted. Now, that thought resurfaced. No, it couldn't be true. She calmed herself and double-checked the address with the courier, only to realize she had filled out the wrong district. Veronica let out a sigh of relief. Then I'll return the package to you. Please verify the address again, the courier said. Veronica thought for a moment, then agreed. It was fine. She could personally deliver the gift to Camilla and surprise her. After calling in some mid-level managers, Veronica held a small meeting in her office. Suddenly, the door opened. Oliver strode in with a document in hand, grinning triumphantly at Veronica. Ha, it's just a document. I've completed it, he said with a smirk. Veronica remained silent, not responding. The others in the room were equally still, unsure of what to do. The last person who had acted this way was Phineas, and as everyone knew, the outcome had been disastrous. But Oliver was different. He was Veronica's soft spot, so it seemed unlikely he would face the same fate. Sure enough, Veronica dismissed everyone else and kept only Oliver in the room. Outside the door, the others gathered in the stairwell. In situations like this, it was only natural for people to gossip. Oliver looked so impressive at first, seemed quite imposing, but later, we found out he's just a useless idiot. I never imagined that President Liu, such a strong and capable woman, would be so infatuated with a pretty boy. When they overheard this conversation, Phineas' former colleagues joined in with their complaints. Honestly, if President Liu had stayed with Phineas, things would have turned out better. Phineas wouldn't have left. At least his work ability was undeniable. He could do the work of 3 people on his own. Now that he's left, I've had to delegate his tasks to others, but they can't handle it. I realize now that the tough jobs were always left to Phineas. I need to find someone else now. One person reminisced. Did Phineas ever do anything outrageous? He always seemed so composed. But once someone who had been criticized left a place where their departure affected others, people began to feel more sympathetic, especially when they realized that the person who had been mocked and ridiculed might not have been as bad as everyone had said. They started sharing their thoughts. People said he was chasing President Liu, but before he barged into the office, there was no sign of him being that kind of person. I've noticed him. He's quite upright. Could it be that he angered President Liu privately and got revenge on him? When Phineas burst into the office, it didn't seem like someone pursuing President Liu. His words sounded more like, everyone thought of the word but no one dared to say it out loud. They had all been through enough in their careers to recognize certain things. Maybe, just maybe, they were right. But soon, everyone dispersed and returned to their offices. Back in Veronica's office, she sat with her head lowered, silent. Oliver thought she was feeling guilty about what happened last night but didn't know how to express it. So he smiled and tried to offer an olive branch. He stepped toward Veronica to hug her, but she swatted his arms away. Veronica lifted her head, her eyes sharp and cold, her voice cutting through the air without an ounce of warmth. I need to set some boundaries. This is a work environment. Please, have the proper attitude for work. It was the first time Veronica had spoken so harshly to Oliver, and he looked slightly embarrassed. But nothing happened before. You never minded when Phineas was around. Veronica stiffened. She wanted to explain, to say that it wasn't like that, but once again, the words failed her. She ushered Oliver out, leaving him standing in the doorway, and then sat down in her chair, lost in thought. After a while, she picked up her phone. She thought about texting Phineas, but realized she couldn't find him in her contacts. Then it hit her, she had blocked him. Veronica unblocked Phineas, and after a moment of hesitation, typed out a message. I'll be home for dinner tonight. I brought a gift for Camila. She sent the message, but the familiar red exclamation mark appeared. Veronica instinctively wanted to explode in anger, but then she stopped herself and thought, why was it okay for her, and for Oliver, but not for Phineas? Perhaps it was because Phineas had always quietly accepted everything, so Veronica had taken away his right to act selfishly. For the first time, Veronica realized that she should be the one to take the initiative to compromise. Phineas wasn't actually that bad. Her phone suddenly rang. It was from the business partner who had bullied Camila's son. Veronica felt a pang of guilt for Camila, but the adult world was complicated. Even if she hated it, she had to endure it. Veronica had to adhere to these agreements. She picked up the phone, and the furious voice on the other end immediately blasted her. Phineas from your company is outrageous. Not only did he report the school, but now he's reported our company. Didn't you say you'd handle it? Now he's coming after us again. You'd better explain yourself. As she listened to the tone of the person on the other side, Veronica's anger began to boil. How could they act so self-righteous after bullying her daughter, Camila? How much had Camila suffered at school? Veronica couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow for Camila. If she could, she would want them to pay for what they had done. But on the phone, she forced herself to keep a polite smile, still trying to appease the person on the other end. After all, the project couldn't be lost. The company's financial situation was far from good. It was on the verge of collapse. That's why her mood had been so foul lately, and why she had been dragging Oliver out with her. It was all a distraction. When the call ended, Veronica immediately ordered her secretary to bring Phineas to her office. She hadn't expected him to go against her wishes. He had become bolder. After a brief silence, the secretary spoke up. President Liu, Phineas has resigned. Chapter 7. Veronica's mind went blank, and it took a while before she found her voice again. Why wasn't I informed? As soon as the words left her mouth, she realized something was off. The departure of an ordinary employee didn't require informing the CEO. It was nothing more than a typical personnel change. It was just one of the least noticeable employees, perhaps even the one who had been mocked as the company's lowest tier. Her mind involuntarily recalled the phone call from the courier last night. Veronica suddenly stood up, but before she could steady herself, she stumbled toward the door. The secretary saw her nearly staggering and became concerned. President Liu, are you okay? Veronica didn't answer, and frantically pressed the elevator button. Only one thought was racing through her mind. It couldn't be. They couldn't have left her. Veronica drove recklessly, finally arriving at her familiar home. But when she stood at the door, she hesitated. Her mind was stopping her, telling her not to face the truth of what awaited her behind the door. But Veronica still stiffly opened it. The more than 500 square meter luxury apartment was spacious enough, but it was people who made a house a home. And now, that warmth was gone. Veronica looked at the spotless house, devoid of any traces of life. Like the most orderly model home, it could no longer be called a home. On the table, there was a conspicuous document. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The divorce agreement stared back at her in bold letters. Veronica lost her strength and collapsed onto the floor. She had lost her family overseas. Everything was different now. When I first arrived here, I was a bit flustered. After reporting to the company, I met my leader, Marco. He was also a single dad, and we immediately connected. He kindly recommended a house for me to rent. Most importantly, he also helped me get Camila into school. Things are different here compared to back home. The school requires recommendation letters and all sorts of complex procedures. I was sweating bullets. Thankfully, everything went smoothly. Camila loved the life here. She was curious about everything, but occasionally, she would stare blankly at families walking by, perfectly synchronized. Indeed, children still miss their mothers. I felt a pang of guilt. Was it wrong to sever Camila's connection with Veronica like this? But then, Camila suddenly turned to me and said, "Dad, can I have that Barbie doll? I see all the other girls have one." I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. "Wait until I have a day off, and I'll take you to buy it. Your birthday is next week. I'll buy you anything you want, and I want an Elsa princess dress." Camila boldly made her wish. I waved my hand in approval. "You have the best dad in the world." Camila happily jumped into my arms and cuddled. She seemed even more cheerful here than she was back home. The pressure from the family environment back there had certainly affected her. To some extent, children are never as naive and unaware as parents believe them to be. They are always experiencing the world in their own way. I pulled Camila onto my lap. "Camila, if anything makes you upset, you must tell me. If you miss your mom." Before I could finish, Camila shook her head and interrupted me. "I like living like this with you, Dad." I could tell from her tone that there was no hesitation or forced feeling. At that moment, my heart finally felt at ease. Chapter 8, Life Abroad, though unfamiliar at first, had begun to take on a sense of order. Camila's birthday had arrived. I prepared a large cake and invited Marco's family to join us for the celebration. Of course, the Elsa princess dress was ready. I imagined that tonight, Camila would be the happiest little princess in the world. But when I reached the door, I saw a familiar figure I certainly did not want to see. I instinctively wanted to leave. "Are you going to avoid me every time you see me?" Veronica's voice called out. "Aren't you even going to say a word?" I didn't expect her to follow me here. At least, not so quickly. But what needed to be faced, had to be faced. I turned back in silence. "Let's go somewhere else. This isn't your place. Can't I come in?" "Not today." Veronica's eyes flashed with a hint of hurt. "Have you found another woman?" I let her misunderstand. I didn't want to explain. The two of us ended up at a cafe. Veronica looked at me sadly, forcing a bitter smile. "So, there's no possibility anymore. Can you give me one more chance?" After you left, I reflected on myself. I admit, I've been harsh all these years. I shouldn't have taken out my frustrations with my forced marriage on you, and I shouldn't have let that drunken mistake affect Camila. I looked at her calmly. "If I had known from the start that this marriage was forced for you, I wouldn't have married you. As for that night, it was you who invited me. I thought we were finally reconciling, but instead, it just led us deeper into the abyss." Veronica lowered her head, almost overcome with pain. "I'm sorry, I only realize this now. Can you give me one more chance? Camila needs her mother. Let me learn to be a good mom again. Let me prove that I love her." I shook my head, my tone cold. "If you want to see Camila, as long as she agrees, I won't stop you. As for anything else, don't bring it up again. I have to leave now." "So, today is that woman's birthday. Is that why you're in such a hurry to see her?" Veronica bit her lip, unwilling to let go, staring at me with resentment. I couldn't help but laugh mockingly. "Don't you want to prove you're a good mom? Today is Camila's birthday, and you've already forgotten." Veronica's face turned pale instantly. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I simply walked out of the cafe, not bothering to look back. The birthday girl, Camila, had one wish for the day, that her father would be happy. She wished that all children in the world could be with the ones they loved. The birthday girl's wish was the most important. "Dad, be happy. Always be with Camila." "Yay." Camila cheered and raised her hands. Marco's son didn't understand, but raised his hand too. Everyone was getting ready to share the cake. The room was filled with noise, laughter, and joy. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, but no sound followed. Marco signaled if I wanted to check. I shook my head. Happiness was the most important thing today. Anything unpleasant could wait. Epilogue. Veronica's company collapsed. The project fund suddenly became unmanageable, and it was discovered that Oliver had embezzled company money to buy himself a car, even using Veronica's name to do so. This nearly got Veronica imprisoned. But even after Oliver was arrested, Veronica didn't feel any satisfaction. If only she hadn't tried to use Oliver to keep Phineas away from her in the first place. But once things had happened, there was no room for regret. Meanwhile, Camilla and I were about to go skiing when we received the news, because Elsa was supposed to live in a world of snow and ice. Now, Camilla seemed like a carefree child again, and my work had been going smoothly. Everything in life was improving. Here's to happiness.